This is question 29 from section 1 of the 2014 BMAT, and in this question we're asked what would most strengthen the argument. Okay, so let's start by having a look at the passage. First, we're told that morning sickness isn't completely understood, even though it affects 500,000 women each year in the UK. So this is just a fact about our current knowledge and how many women are affected. And then it says that one theory is that hormones create a response in the brain that evolved to help women avoid consuming harmful substances. So actually in context, the writer isn't just mentioning that this is a theory. Actually, the writer's basically reporting what the reasoning for this theory is. So this is basically, although the writer's saying it as if it's not their own opinion, it is basically what the rest of the passage is arguing towards. So I'm going to treat this as if it was basically the writer's opinion. It's the opinion that's being supported by the rest of the passage. And then if we look at, so the opinion basically is that this theory is plausible. And then if we look at sentence 3, it says, in the past, this hormone response that creates morning sickness would have protected the fetus in the first 3 months when it's most vulnerable. So this is just a fact about human development. And the last sentence says, if the mother eats less and only has simple foods, then she's less likely to eat something dangerous. So that's a kind of obvious fact, but still a fact. And then, as I already said, so sentence 2 is basically the conclusion the argument is going towards, although the conclusion isn't that the theory says this, the conclusion is the content of the theory, that morning sickness is an evolved response to protect the fetus. So then if we want to summarise the argument, and this is our conclusion, well, what's the reason? Basically, the fetus is vulnerable to harmful substances, especially in the first 3 months, and if the mother eats less or simpler foods, then that's going to be less dangerous, it's going to be fewer harmful substances. And so maybe the reason morning sickness evolved is to prevent mothers eating dangerous foods. So if we're looking for things that would strengthen this argument, we're basically looking for things that would make this explanation more plausible as an explanation of morning sickness. And we're actually given multiple options, so it could be that more than one of these does strengthen the argument, so let's look at them one by one. Option 1 says that morning sickness declines after the 3rd month. So does this sound like it would strengthen the argument? Well, why is the 3rd month relevant? It's because it says the fetus is less vulnerable after the first 3 months. And actually, if morning sickness did evolve to protect the fetus from harmful substances, then it would make sense that morning sickness goes away when the fetus is less vulnerable. So it does seem like option 1 is something we might expect to see, or that might become more likely if this is the correct explanation. So now you might be thinking, well, that doesn't prove this is the correct explanation, it might just be a coincidence. That's absolutely true, but we're just looking for something that strengthens the argument, i.e. makes it more likely at all. And if this basically, if this explanation would have a consequence that we do actually see, then that does give us some more reason, even if it's not a conclusive reason, to think this is the correct explanation. So option 1 does strengthen the argument. If we look at option 2, it says that pregnant women sometimes crave strange foods. So would that strengthen the argument? Well, actually it seems like that would weaken the argument. Because if there was some kind of evolutionary pressure to avoid eating harmful substances, so if that was important for human survival, then it seems unlikely that pregnant women would crave strange foods, because we've been told that makes them more likely to consume harmful substances. So actually this seems to contradict what the argument's saying. And lastly, if we look at option 3, it says women with morning sickness eat less and eat more simple foods. So does that strengthen or weaken the argument? Well, that seems to strengthen the argument because it suggests that morning sickness is doing the job that the explanation thinks it should, because it says eating less or more simple food is less dangerous, and it looks like morning sickness does actually make that happen. So similar to option 1, although it doesn't prove this is the correct explanation, it does give us more reason to believe it. So it's options 1 and 3 that strengthen the argument, and that corresponds to the answer being E.